Hi there. I'm Alberta Darling, your state senator, and I'm here to talk about my day to day in the Capitol. I chair the Finance Committee, and I'm very happy to tell you we had some really great bills up. And actually, most of the bills centered on giving opportunities for our Wisconsinites to have success. And I think because we were very frugal during the budget, because we said let's live within our means, let's have a balanced budget, and let's not spend more than we really have to until we know what we can spend. We had revenue estimates that came in that our revenues were increasing and our expenditures were going down. And so we looked at what do we need to address before we go out for campaign season. And we thought we needed to address several issues that I wanted to tell you about. Number one is during the budget deliberations, we talked about education. We made the biggest investment in education in the entire history of the state. And what we did was we said, you know what, we want to give every child an increased allocation. And we did for every child in every school district across the state, the biggest investment ever in education. But we said, you know what, when we were looking at education, we saw two issues that we needed to address. One is we have a group of districts that are in low revenue districts. This means that in 1992, when we changed our system to having caps on spending, those districts that were much below the national or the statewide average of spending were sort of trapped there. And some said, you know, that's really not fair. We need to bring those low revenue districts further up the ladder so that they can have more resources to be more competitive, especially with the school districts in the surrounding area. So we made that investment today in low revenue districts. And also there's a group of districts that were considered sparsity aid districts. In other words, they were spread out. They were mostly in rural areas where they're spread out, and their revenues were significantly lower than the rest of the districts throughout the state. So we said, let's try to bring those two groups up. And that's what we did in finance today. We said, okay, we'll look at those bills and we'll end up voting on them and passing them back to the Assembly and Senate to vote on if they choose to. So that's a good thing. That's a special opportunity for low revenue districts and sparsity aid districts to say, have their citizens say, you know what, do we want to make that investment in our school districts? And if we do, we can do that. The other issue that we really wanted to address, and I give the Assembly credit for this, is foster care. I've worked very hard on foster care. In fact, that was the reason I came to the legislature, because when I was in the community as a volunteer and as a businesswoman and as a teacher, I worked to help kids who were in foster care. And I thought, you know, if I ever have the chance to go as a policymaker to help these kids, I'm going to go. And that's one of the main reasons I went to the legislature, to be an advocate for these kids who, through no fault of their own, were either abused or neglected by their parents and were in out-of-home placements. And so the Assembly had a task force on foster care, and they brought several initiatives to our interest that we wanted to fund. One was we wanted to put more money in prevention of foster care abuse, kids abuse, neglect. We wanted to get healthier families, so we invested in those grants. We also wanted to give the foster parents more resources to deal with the children who were in their homes by no fault of their own, but had been placed there by the courts. And foster parents are extremely important to our foster kids because it gives them an opportunity to be in a family when the courts feel like they're not able to be with their own families for whatever time. And so we made several investments in foster care. And what is interesting about any given time throughout the state, that we have 7,200 kids who are in out-of-home placements. That's bigger than many of our real small rural areas. That's a lot of kids in out-of-home placement that we need to address. And one issue that we looked at is what happens to these kids when they age out of foster care. Many of them do not even graduate from high school, and most of them do not go on to higher ed or to tech school. And we felt that they should have an opportunity for success by having the opportunity to go to tech or college if they graduated from high school. So that will be available to those kids as well. I'm very happy about that. And how did this become a big issue? As I mentioned, the Assembly had a task force who went all over the state and asked people from all corners of our state, what should we do about all these kids in out-of-home placement? What do we need to do to launch them in a more successful life? And these initiatives we brought to the table on finance, and we voted them out so they can come to the floor in the Senate and the Assembly and hopefully be voted out. The other issue we had addressed was the opioid epidemic. We've been talking a lot about this, and I really credit my co-chair, John Nygren, for this major work on this opioid epidemic. We brought two bills to the fore. One was one I teamed with John about that I want to tell you about. We have people throughout the state who are counselors for drug abuse and for counseling and for treatment, but we don't have enough of these professionals. So our bill will increase the number of people who are in our state who can address these issues. And this is a huge issue throughout our state. People are saying we need more professionals to help our communities address this issue, and that's what this bill does. We also looked at some bills to help our vets. We had a bill to hire our heroes, which will be an incentive for businesses to hire vets and take a chance with them to help train and educate them and give them the opportunity for a decent paying job so they can have a home, they can have an apartment, they can have access to health care, they can deal with their mental health and other health issues in a comprehensive, coordinated way. And I'm very proud of that bill. And also, we looked at low-income housing. WIDA, our economic development group for the state, which teams with the federal government to say what are our issues that we need to address, teams with the federal government and the private sector to say how can we address low-income housing. And because of this investment, we're going to have more low-income housing that developers can invest in, and they'll have some gap funding that WIDA will invest in along with the federal government, because you know what, these developers cannot make enough money just having the private sector investment. They have to have this partnership with the federal government and with the state government. So you can see we've done a lot to address special opportunities for special citizens who need our help. And I'm very happy that we got these bills out today. And the surprising thing is we got most of these bills out in a bipartisan vote, because the Finance Committee has 16 people, 4 Democrats and 12 Republicans in both houses, the Senate and the Democrat side. And what we did was we got 16-0 votes on half of the bills, which is really, really exciting. Not half the bills, on most of the bills. And that is going to make a huge difference. The 2 bills we did not have 16-0 votes on were the governor's special session bills, which dealt with issues that they didn't want to give the governor a victory, so we're not going to talk about those today. What we're going to talk about, we had 16-0 votes on all these bills that are going to address special opportunities for some of our special citizens who could have an opportunity for success. So day well done in finance. I had the opportunity to chair that committee, and we're going to go on next week, on Monday and Tuesday of next week, to deal with the governor's special sessions bills, which will deal with the child tax credit, which I really would like your advice about. I know that this tax credit is considered very important by the governor, and I want to hear from you what you think about it. We're also going to have a couple of other bills, but we'll talk about those next week, so stay tuned. Thank you for coming and being a part of my discussion, and please let me give me feedback on what you think we did today. And God bless you, God bless the Wisconsinites all over the state, and on Wisconsin.